What's going on, everybody? I'm Brian Taylor, and today it's another beautiful Smoky Mountain morning. It's nice and foggy and smoky out here in East Tennessee, and I want to share with you guys my first year with my pecan orchard. I've grown this on the side of my property, and I've had some struggles with it this year. It's actually one of the first large groups of trees I've ever planted, but because I've had some struggles with it, I haven't really wanted to do a video on it just quite yet. But I also think I should document my first year, and maybe it will help somebody not have as many issues with their first year with pecans. So let's get into it. The first pecan in my row is the candy pecan. Now the candy pecan is an older variety that people have been growing for quite some time. It was used exactly how the name sounds, to be put into sweet treats like candies and pies. It is a very overall good pecan. It produces very heavily, and it's a very popular one to grow. This particular one has had some struggles where a lot of the growth above this center point has died back. I did fertilize, and I'm noticing new buds growing, so we'll see if I can get some of the growth up top. I am lucky though, my graft is down here at the lower portion, so this one is still growing the grafted variety above the graft point, so I'm hopeful that this one will take off. All right, next on my row is my Cape Fear pecan. This pecan is doing really well. It's had kind of a weird growth to it all above the graft line, which is great. This pecan is grown for its light colored pecans. It's also extremely productive, and it's known to bear nuts early, which is good if you're starting an orchard like I am. It also has a nice upright growth habit and is very vigorous. So I'm looking forward to the future growth on this sucker as well. All right, so this one I got to duck a little less, which is nice because it's actually growing up fairly straight. I'm going to do it anyway. This is my Curtis pecan. Now, Curtis pecans, I like this pecan because, well, my wife's maiden name is Curtis, so the Curtises are our family, so I thought it was kind of cool that we could find a pecan with that name. But it's also a really good pecan here for the South because it is one of the latest pecans to break dormancy. So you won't get any late frost killing off of its blooms. That's probably why this pecan is one of the best ones to survive that little flurry we had in March. But it also has a nice way of being a pollinizer for some of the other pecans because of its late blooming. It can come in and finish the job that maybe some of the others weren't able to do. It doesn't have the biggest nuts. It has some smaller, kind of light colored nuts, but it is a good producer, and I'm looking forward to having it. So this is my poor desirable pecan tree. It didn't make it, but I did notice that after or below the graft point down here, I had some new growth coming up. So these are seedlings from whatever it was grafted on. I'm not sure what it's going to turn into, but I've decided just to let it happen. If anything, it can help be a pollinator for some of these other varieties. Unfortunately, I've got this story for several of mine. Willis Nursery is pretty cool though. If they die within the first year, they will refund you. So I did get a refund minus the shipping costs on this. So I'm gonna go ahead and just see what happens with it, and if I decide or I can find better varieties that I want to graft onto it, I'll have some rootstock to do so. This is my Elliott variety. Unfortunately, you have the same situation happen as the desirable. So we're also going to, the rootstock actually looks like it's got slightly different leaf patterns than the other one. So maybe I've got two different types of rootstock between these two trees. Regardless, I'm gonna let it grow and just see what I can get from it. I believe this one's pronounced Mahon. It is a really cool pecan. It produces a large, dark, rich pecan that actually produces late in the season. This particular tree is one that can grow very large. These are one of the bigger varieties of pecans, and it's recommended that you have these, away from your houses because of the size that they can get. So it'll be pretty cool. I've got these pecans about 24 feet apart, which is actually a little bit dense for pecans, but because I've got some not so good ones in between, I'm thinking I'm gonna be all right. All right, next on my list is actually a creek pecan. Now, if you'll notice that so far my pecans have been in alphabetical order and this one's not. This one was actually put into the ground this last week. It was one that came up at Tractor Supply and I used it to replace one of the varieties that even the rootstock died. It bugs me a little bit that it's not in alphabetical order, but I think I'm gonna live. The creek pecan is actually an early fruit setting pecan or nut setting pecan. They actually kind of use it as a introductory tree for pecan orchards. So if you're starting up a pecan orchard, they'd plant one of these like every other tree, and they'd actually rip these out after the more desirable types of pecans began fruiting. But just because this one produced so quickly, they'd use it to get an upstart on their orchard so that they'd have some kind of cash flow coming in with the land that they have, because they can produce 2 to 3 years faster than any other pecans. So we'll get some good growth out of this sucker. It's my biggest tree by far as well, so hopefully we can start seeing some nuts on this one before we see them anywhere else. And I'm gonna leave it because I don't like ripping up trees unless I absolutely need to, and I got the space, so I'm gonna keep it. Then unfortunately, down the fence line is my graveyard, where I lost, I believe, 5 different pecans. They'll all be replaced from Willis, but those are the ones that I am no longer able to claim that I have. But the very end, and we'll walk down and I'll show you, I've got one more. All right, the last pecan on the row is a Sumner. There's not a lot of information on it other than it's originated from southern Georgia. It produces a large late season nut, and it's also a late season pollinator like some of my others down there. So it should be a good addition. It's got about 150 feet between it and the nearest tree. So I'm gonna have to fill in some gaps, but I do believe it'll still be able to pollinate and get pollinated by some of the others. One of the other things that I did that I didn't include in my earlier part of the video was I spaced them not only alphabetical order, but I also was spacing them between type 1 and type 2 pecans so that they can have the maximum amount of pollination. There were some that I sacrificed the ability for them to be in alphabetical order in order for them to be in order of type 1 and type 2 pollinator types, because even though I might have some OCD with that, I do not put OCD above productivity, so having the 2 different kinds is more important to me. So that's what I've got so far for my pecan orchard. I'm excited to see this grow. I will do updates, and hopefully in the next few years our family is going to be enjoying so many pecans that we don't know what to do with them, and we'll be able to give them to family and friends and maybe even sell a few. All right, if you want to see these updates, subscribe to the channel. We look forward to seeing more people and seeing our channel grow, and we'll catch you on the next time. Bye.